Hi, class. So, to continue the discussion, what is philosophy? Well, it's translated from the ancient Greek. Philia means love, and Sophia means wisdom. So, philosophy is essentially the love of wisdom. And as previously discussed, philosophy involves investigating beliefs, okay, and uh, specifically arguments. And the next lesson is about logic and what is an argument. But just to go over it briefly, an argument is a set of claims, some of which offer support for a conclusion, or they infer a conclusion. So some of those statements will be reasons that are there to convince you to accept a conclusion. And philosophers deal essentially with arguments. If someone thinks that they should not buy products made from sweatshop labor, then they need an argument, so a set of claims to defend that. And as we saw with the previous lecture, some of those claims, at least one of those claims, will be a fundamental belief, one that can't itself be defended. It's kind of the root or the base, the ground of the argument that follows. Uh, but philosophers are in the business of investigating and questioning assumptions. So it's not as simple as saying that some fundamental belief that's good enough. Those beliefs need to themselves be defended uh, against possible counter argument, because we might have fundamental beliefs that are inherently flawed. We need to open ourselves up to criticism and not only question our conclusions, but question the reasons behind them, or that's the reasons supporting them. Philosophers are constantly asking questions, and we will soon study the philosopher Socrates, who essentially was always asking questions. He would go and meet people who described themselves as experts, and he would want to learn from them because he didn't think that he knew anything, and so he would just ask them question after question after question, and he would always find that these so-called experts, couldn't answer all the questions that he was asking, or would reach sort of absurdities where they, through the process of answering his questions, they came to conclusions or inferences that they never intended and that were ridiculous. So essentially, Socrates, through the process of asking a lot of questions, helped people realize that they didn't know what they thought they knew. Okay. In a similar vein, philosophy is engaging in dialogue. It's throwing out a hypothesis, throwing out a theory, an idea, and engaging with critics and critical thinkers to explore that idea, see if it can be defended, see if it has any major holes or problems in it, and so philosophers are always communicating and engaging in a productive, critical discussion with each other, and that's going to make our discussion boards so important, because this class, philosophy, you don't do it justice by just reading. You have to engage in it. You have to throw out some ideas, throw out some arguments, and listen to some arguments too that you may not agree with, because that is how we grow in wisdom. Okay. Uh, and philosophy is about exploring the fundamental questions in life. So it's what are fundamental questions in life? Well, what's the nature of reality? Why does something exist rather than nothing? Is there a purpose to life? Is there a purpose to my life? Is there a purpose to history? Uh, you know, am I free? Do I have free will, or am I constantly caused by some prior cause that's forcing me to act in this way or that? That's an important question. And then the whole moral philosophy is very important. What is right and wrong? We're always doing things. We hope that we're doing the right thing. So that is a fundamental question. And then there's also the philosophy of religion. So questions about if God exists or not, and what the concept of God is. Like, what does God even mean? And then questions about what God's attributes are, if God has any attributes, and things like that. So religious questions, there's philosophers study those. And also social justice questions. How should we organize ourselves? What's the best form of government? What's a just law versus an unjust law? These are questions that everybody is concerned with, and that is the realm of philosophy. And something that is interesting about those questions is that uh, they have no answer that can be provided that would satisfy everybody. They are open questions. It's not to say that they don't have answers. Philosophers have all sorts of answers for these fundamental questions in life. But there will always be a counter argument, because these, let's take the concept of social justice. That's not the kind of thing you can measure. It's not something that everyone can agree on, because everyone sees it clearly in front of their eyes, and they can measure it, and they can put it through some kind of repeatable, controlled experiment. You can get overwhelming agreement among scientists, for instance, studying scientific questions. You'll never find that with philosophy. There's always holes in different arguments, or potential holes, or different ways of approaching the issue, or addressing the issue. Okay. And related to that is a Bertrand Russell quote that I will post below this video. But Bertrand Russell says, the value of philosophy is, in fact, to be sought largely in its very uncertainty. The person who has no tincture of philosophy goes through life imprisoned in the prejudices derived from common sense, from the habitual beliefs of his or her age, or his or her nation, and from convictions which have grown up in his or her mind without the cooperation or consent of deliberate reason. Okay? To such a person, the world tends to become definite, finite, obvious. Common objects rouse no questions, and unfamiliar possibilities are contemptuously rejected. As soon as we begin to philosophize, on the contrary, we find that even the most everyday things lead to problems to which only very incomplete answers can be given. Okay? So, and there's more to the quote than that, but you can read it for yourself in this discussion board. Okay, so let's look at major branches of philosophy. And again, the questions raised in these major branches of philosophy do not have unanimous agreement, as far as the answers go, among philosophers, because the answers that can be provided are incomplete in some way. Okay, so a major one is one, metaphysics. And this is a study of reality. What kind of things exist in the world? So I mentioned free will. That is a metaphysical question. Are we free, or are we conditioned by prior causes? You see what I mean there? If we're free, then supposedly when we reach, we go from point A to point B there, then we have possibilities actually open to us. This is what freedom is that at some point in our timeline, in our life, we have actual possibilities to do this or that. But there's another way of looking at it where, when you find yourself at point B, you may feel like you have possible ways of being, like I can stop recording or stop watching this recording, I can go eat a snack, or I can continue watching this recording without a snack. And you might feel like these C and D paths are actually open to you, but perhaps they aren't. Perhaps there's no way that you could do anything but continue watching this video right now as you're watching it. So this would be no free will. Okay, and there are good philosophical arguments on the side of free will as well as on the side of no free will. Okay, that's a metaphysical question. And also when I talked about God and whether God exists and what attributes God has, that would also fall under the realm of metaphysics and the study of reality. So those are a couple of the many subjects of metaphysics. To epistemology. And this is the study of knowledge. We're always going around saying that we know this or that. I know how to best interpret Aristotle's virtue ethics, for instance. Or I know that I'm watching this video right now. Well, epistemology has some interesting questions that arise up. What counts for knowledge? What conditions must be met to say that I know something? Because there has to be some conditions met. And what are those conditions? And also, how is knowledge, how do we come to know something? And that's an important, investigation that we'll be looking at over and over again in this class. Because on one side, we have philosophers who say reason, okay, just using the faculties of the mind and using critical thinking and logic, we can come to know things, okay? And then other philosophers say, no, reason doesn't give us knowledge. What gives us knowledge are the senses, okay? I can't know anything unless I first see it or smell it or hear it or feel it, so that the senses are really the source of knowledge. And then the people on the side of reason would say, well, no, your senses often fool you. Every time you sleep and you're dreaming, you think that what you're sensing is real, and it's actually not. Okay, so the senses are not, where we get our knowledge from. And then third will be axiology. And this is the study of values. Okay, and important fields in axiology include ethics, what is right and what is wrong, social justice, what makes a just state, a just government, a just law. Those are values questions. And then also aesthetics, which we're not going to really study in this class, but what conditions must be met to say that a piece of artwork is beautiful, for instance. And are there conditions that make everyday things, live objects like, a black pen, can those everyday objects be beautiful? That's another debate in philosophy. Okay, so philosophers examine beliefs, and everything's out on the table, and it's essentially critical thinking on overdrive, and these are the major fields of philosophy that we will continually engage with over the course of this class.